Does Obama love the socialist? Is he really a Marxist like Steve Malzberg suggests? Let's ask a socialist. Billy Wharton is on the phone. He's with the Socialist Party of the United States of America, the website socialistparty-usa.org. He is the co-chair of the party. And welcome to the program, Billy. How are you?
Hi, thanks, Thom. Doing great here.
Thank you for being with us. Your thoughts on the conservative talking point that Barack Obama is a socialist?
Well, I think by any rational measure, Barack Obama is not a socialist.
Because?
There's no evidence at all. If we look, for example, at how he's treating BP, the oil spill in the Gulf, no socialist would allow BP to continue to pollute the Gulf, to continue to evade EPA regulations, and to continue to foot drag on a variety of issues. A socialist president would have intervened and made BP into a public company.
Yeah.
So that's just the latest.
You mean a corporate by public? Because they call themselves a public company because their stock is publicly traded. You mean owned by the federal government, public company?
Yeah, I'm talking about public ownership.
You mean nationalization?
I'm talking about going in and taking the assets of BP.
Yeah, I'm actually all in favor of that, Billy. And I don't typically call myself a socialist. I call myself a democratic socialist, which makes some Democrats crazy and makes some socialists crazy. I'm curious. The word socialist has so many different meanings to so many people. Karl Marx used it, of course, famously. Marx and Engels, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, came out of that, and the Norwegians use it to describe their form of government. And there's a radical difference between Norway and the old Soviet Union and Joe Stalin. When you guys, who are the official socialists, use the word socialist, do you mean the nationalization of all means of production and distribution in the United States like Marx talked about? Or do you mean more like social democracy where you still have free enterprise, but anything that has to do with the commons is controlled or owned by the government?
We're talking about two things when we talk about democratic socialism.
Right.
The first part is creating an economy that guarantees people the things they need for their everyday lives. For instance, everyone needs health care, everyone needs housing. We also believe people have a right to a job. Mm-hmm. We can talk more about Obama in relation to the unemployment crisis.
Right.
So that's one part of what we see as democratic socialism. The second part is applying the rules of democracy to the economy. So it's some sort of economic democracy.
Right.
In some cases, that's going to mean running large corporations publicly, at public ownership, say, of the energy sector, public ownership of the transportation sector. That's going to be state ownership. But the other part of what we see socialism as is self-organization of working people. Mm-hmm. And that means that people can operate. The place where most people spend most of their adult lives is at work. And we think that work should be organized democratically, that working people themselves should make decisions about how long they work, how hard they work, what their wages are.
In Germany, by law, 50% of the members of the boards of directors of every corporation have to be from the ranks of the union in the company. Sure. Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about cooperatives, like Mondragon, where the workers own the company?
Yeah, I'm talking more something closer to the Mondragon, but more specifically to the American context. I'm talking about a company like the Alvarado Street Bakery,
right,
which is worker-owned and worker-run.
Right.
And we have an interview with them in our upcoming edition of our newspaper. Mm-hmm. And in Alvarado Street, workers make decisions on everyday decisions, plus decisions about where the company is going longer term.
Yeah, well, that's also true of Mondragon. I mean, I was in Spain last year, and we spent a couple of days there in Mondragon and interviewed a whole bunch of the people, from some of the workers to some of the management, who their top management makes 3 times as much as their lowest paid janitor, which is pretty startling. So you're looking at alternative forms of business organization that are not government owned and run. So you're not you're not using the word socialism the way that Karl Marx, who arguably coined it, meant, but more in the way that the progressives of Northern Europe mean it. Do I have that right?
Yeah, but I think what Marx offers to people is a really good diagnosis of how capitalism works.
Yeah, absolutely. Das Kapital was a brilliant diagnosis. His prescription didn't seem to work out all that well, though.
Well, you have to give him a break because he was writing in the 19th century.
Sure.
And I think we live in a much more complex society than he lived in.
Yeah.
So one more point about the cooperatives. We're also talking about, for example, we want to put people that are unemployed back to work. So we want to create cooperatives that are made up only of unemployed people that receive grants from the government and begin to operate, begin to create enterprises. And we think that's one really efficient way to deal with the unemployment question.
Yeah, I mean, this is happening down in Argentina, where people are taking over factories that have been abandoned by companies because they weren't profitable. The companies wanted to offshore the jobs to China. The workers said, no, you don't. We're taking this company over, and they're running it themselves.
That's right. So it's going to be a really dynamic tension between some parts of the economy that are owned by the state and other parts that are still inside the society operating independently.
Right.
And we think that's the kind of way in which you can develop a more democratic socialist project than the ones that were attempted in the 20th century.
I think, Billy, we're talking with Billy Wharton, the co-chair of the Socialist Party of the United States. Socialist Party-USA.org is their website. I think, Billy, you keep talking about these kinds of things like this, and you're actually going to get more and more Americans on your side. It's really remarkable how the word socialist is polling better right now than the word conservative in many places. And I think Americans are starting to realize that, we tried Reaganomics. It broke our country.
Absolutely.
And we tried deregulation, and it broke our Gulf of Mexico. So, Billy Wharton, the Socialist Party, socialistparty-usa.org. Billy, thanks for dropping by and explaining that Barack Obama ain't no socialist.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good talking with you.